DAZN News.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, a story that's grabbing a lot of people's attention right now is that Errol Spence versus Sean Porter for the WBC and IBF welterweight world titles will be shown live on Skysports in the UK on September 28th. And, you know, it's a good fight. No complaints about the fight, in all honesty. This is one of the better fights that the PBC will have put on in recent memory. But the story here isn't so much the fight itself, but where it's going to be shown.
The network.
Over there in the UK. That's really what the story is. You see, people may have forgotten that a couple of months ago,
December last year,
late last year, in December, the PBC announced what was supposed to be a landmark deal between themselves and ITV.
supposed to be a big deal.
ITV, which just so happens to be the UK's biggest commercial broadcaster. This was supposed to be a big deal. This was supposed to herald Al Heyman's invasion of the UK market. At least that's how people were interpreting the deal. That's how they were interpreting the move. And this was reported to be an exclusive deal. Exclusive. Emphasis on exclusive. That would feature a minimum of 15 events per year, 15 PBC cards, 15 events per year on ITV and ITV partnered networks, ITV channels. And, we're seeing this, that the Porter versus Spence fight, it's not even going to be on ITV. And that begs the question, okay, well, then how exclusive was that ITV deal when a PBC fight is ending up on Sky as opposed to ITV? What happened, essentially, what happened to Al Heyman's invasion, quote-unquote invasion, of the UK market? Because that's how people were interpreting the deal. It was supposed to be a big landmark deal, yet since announcing that deal in late last year, in December, how many fights have they actually shown on ITV, and where's the invasion so far? What's the progress report for Al Heyman and the PBC's invasion of the UK market? Because so far, seems like that invasion never really got off the ground. All honesty, outside of that Chris Eubank versus James DeGale fight, what have they actually done to tap into the UK market? Because that's what the move was supposed to be. That's what the move and the deal was supposed to have heralded. PBC's invasion of the UK market. Yet, since that announcement, we ain't seen much.
No, not really.
And it's important to note that
The partnership.
striking a deal with a major broadcaster over there in the UK, whether it's ITV or Sky Sports, it opens certain doors. It opens the door for you to start staging cards, staging promotions, events over there in the UK, because those promotions have a home. They have an event. Someone has picked up those fights and will air them for the boxing community over there in the UK. Yet so far, what cards has the PBC staged in the United Kingdom? What cards?
What?
It's not the same thing as what Eddie Hearn and Matchroom are attempting to do here in America. They are staging cards here in America. They're not just having fights that are happening in the UK being syndicated over here in America. No, the fights themselves, they're happening on U.S. soil. They're happening here in America. Promotions are being staged. Events are being staged in the United States. In that way, he is trying to tap into the U.S. market. Whereas in the case of the PBC, in the case of Al Heyman, what cards is he staging over there? Where's the invasion? What's the progress report? Because so far, you've partnered up with a network, and it's supposed to be an exclusive 3-year deal for a minimum of 15 events. Yet what we're seeing is now some other network picked up the fight, and you haven't actually staged any events over there in the UK.
Not lately.
The bottom line is that all those months ago, when that news broke of Al Heyman striking a deal with ITV, the bottom line is that when that news broke and people were reacting to it, they may have overestimated what the news actually meant. Because the reality of it all is PBC is not making an active effort to tap into that market. They're not. There aren't no PBC fighters boarding planes and participating in events promoted in the UK, staged in the UK, and being syndicated in the UK. No, that's not what's going on. They're not in any competition with any of the outfits in that market. They're just staging events here in America, and a UK broadcaster picked them up. But in that way, that is not an invasion. And as far as this ITV deal, I question, how exclusive is it really?
Really?
How exclusive is the deal when Sky Sports can come in and purchase a fight that, for all intents and purposes, was supposed to end up on ITV? I question the exclusivity of the deal. I question whether or not that partnership is actually still in play, or did it all fizzle out? Did ITV pull the funding? Are they no longer in bed with the PBC?
What's going on?
I don't know. But at minimum, what this communicates is that for all the hubbub that this news about PBC and ITV striking a deal, for all the hubbub and all the buzz that news created in December of last year, it hasn't actually materialized into anything significant. Moving on. In light heavyweight news, Bob Arum, the Bob Father, he wanted to shed some light, clarify certain things that are being said in regards to Sergey Kovalev's upcoming fight with Canelo Alvarez. He wanted to make it clear that if Kovalev wins that fight, he's going back to ESPN. You see, there are reports circulating that, Kovalev has entered a 3-fight engagement with DAZN, but that engagement is only valid if Kovalev loses the fight. So if Sergey loses the fight, he ends up having 2 comeback fights on DAZN. But if he wins the fight against Canelo, he goes back to ESPN. Bob wanted to make that known. Bob wanted to make that clear. And, how you view the fight really depends on who you ask. There's some people that view it as some kind of a cherry pick. I myself don't share that sentiment. I think that, Canelo going up there to light heavyweight, to unventured territory, where he's done absolutely nothing. I think that him going up there is actually a bigger risk than him taking on an Andre, taking on a Charlo, taking on a Billy Joe Saunders, Gennady Golovkin for a 3rd time. I think that there are more risks involved in a Kovalev fight than any of those fights, because out of all the names that are in that hat, the biggest puncher of all of them is Sergey Kovalev. And it just so happens that, given the politics of boxing, Canelo Alvarez's history of sketchy scorecards, one of the only ways you can really beat this guy is to knock him the fuck out. Because if you don't, there's a chance that the cards are going to come back funny if it goes to a decision, in which case, Sergey stands a better chance of knocking out Canelo than any of those guys. So it's that much more intrigue associated with this fight as opposed to any of those fights. And I've said this many times in the past. It's the main reason that I'm actually a fan of the fight. I'm a proponent of the fight. I think it's a good fight for both guys, really. It's the biggest fight that Sergey Kovalev could hope to be involved in at this stage. And for Canelo, in many ways, he's running more risks with this guy than he would with any of those guys. It's a winnable fight, yeah. It's a winnable fight for both guys, but better still, it's a risky fight. Here's the thing. Let's say they have the fight and Canelo wins the fight, right? That would have to mean that Sergey Kovalev ends up on the DAZN side of the street for his next 2 fights thereafter. But what the fuck does DAZN have to offer this guy in terms of light heavyweight competition, light heavyweight action? What events can they stage for this guy on that side of the street when Top Rank has most of the big names at the weight? I'll tell you what they can stage for him. A Dimitri Bivol fight for the WBA title. Did you guys forget that Dimitri Bivol, the WBA's light heavyweight champion, he's still on the DAZN side of the street?
He ain't going nowhere.
And what DAZN can do for Sergey Kovalev, if he loses that Canelo fight, but he's still contractually obligated to stay there for another 2 fights, what they can do is they can give him a little comeback fight, one more little tune-up fight, and then the 3rd fight, for the 3rd fight, they can have him fight Dimitri Bivol for his WBA title. That's one way that they can orchestrate the situation, because as it stands, Dimitri Bivol, he needs opponents. He needs someone to fight. He needs a big name on his resume, and, that would be the biggest name on his resume so far, the name of Sergey Kovalev. That if Kova loses, he's there for 2 more fights, he has a tune-up fight after the Canelo fight, and then he goes into a Bivol fight. It could break down that way. And this more or less denotes what I'm always talking about in regards to the politics of boxing and how sometimes the different outfits get in the way of opportunities for their fighters to maintain their network commitments to certain platforms, i.e., yes, Top Rank is invested in Sergey Kovalev. He's one of their star players in the light heavyweight division. But you don't see them standing in the way of what is his biggest opportunity. Whereas in the case of some PBC fighters, that's what happens on a regular basis. Okay? You don't see Gervonta Davis crossing the street for that Tevin Farmer fight, right? Nah. You didn't see Deontay Wilder crossing the street for that Anthony Joshua fight, right? Nah, he wasn't about to do that. This is what I'm always talking about. That you'd sooner get a top-ranked fighter to cross the street to DAZN for an opportunity than you would a PBC fighter. When it comes to them, it's not happening. They will get in the way of opportunities for their fighters just to maintain their network commitments. Whereas Bob's letting Sergey go make his fucking money. If he wins, you come back over here to our side. If you lose, you guys can have him, you guys can deal with him and orchestrate situations for him. And it's a fair fucking deal. It's a fair deal. And just in keeping with the theme of light heavyweight news, Dimitri Bivol, the WBA's light heavyweight champion, posted this via his Instagram account with a caption that reads, "He will be returning to action sometime in mid-October and negotiations are underway." The opponent has yet to be announced, and that's really what the story is. Given that most of the big names in the light heavyweight division are on the top-ranked side of the street, who does that leave for Matchroom and DAZN to match Dimitri against? You know, who's he going to fight? I mean, I don't imagine it's going to be a fight of some significance, of some great value or something like that. It's certainly not going to be a unification fight. Two of the champions are fighting each other. Better Bivol and Vosdik. Kovalev, he's supposed to be fighting Canelo at the end of the year. So who does that leave for Dimitri? That's what the question is. What that really denotes is that whoever he ends up fighting, it's going to end up being a keep busy fight of some kind. It really won't be a fight of any real significance to the division. And, you know, still, it's the right idea to keep the guy sharp, keep him fighting, keep him busy, and give him opportunities to line his pockets. You know, it's important to stay busy, but at minimum, what we can deduce is the next time we see Dimitri Bivol in action, it ain't going to be in a big fight. Not yet.
Oi, Herm, mate, Chisora, what are you talking about? No, the heavyweights, you idiot. And then you get the boxing fans going, Hearn, if you dare put Chisora main event over Progress Taylor, you're a disgrace to the sport. So in answer to your question, they'll stay as they are, but they are really a co-main event.
And this is a follow-up to the story from earlier this week in regards to Derek Chisora's epic rant at the press conference where it was announced that Josh Taylor versus Regis Prograis has been added to what was then the Parker versus Chisora card. You know, now, that's been relegated to the co-main to the main. Derek Chisora wasn't too happy about it, but at the end of the day, the same applies. It doesn't appear that they're going to be changing Derek Chisora's fight with Joseph Parker from the co-main to the main. It doesn't look like they're going to be making that accommodation. Some people sympathize with Derek Chisora's gripes that, you know what, in that region of the world, he's the one with the following, not Regis Prograis and not Josh Taylor. And it's for that reason that maybe his fight with Parker should be the main event. But look, I'll be honest, and this is just one man's opinion, you can feel free to disagree. All things considered, to the sport of boxing, you know, on the world stage, in the greatest scheme of things, one of those fights involves two unbeaten champions, and the other involves a journeyman with losses that are almost in the double digits. That's the reality of it, okay? One of these fights is a more significant, more important fight to the sport of boxing as a whole than the other. And Derek Chisora, at least from where I was sitting, seemed very much to me to be an ingrate. Yeah, that's right, he seemed like an ingrate. Because a guy in his position doesn't normally get all these accommodations. That's the truth of it. This guy's got, 9, close to 10 losses? Okay, you're a journeyman. That's what you are. You're a journeyman. Not much chance of winning a world title. You can still sell some tickets, but hey, that's why we're giving you this opportunity. That's why we're keeping you busy. That's why we're affording you the luxury that some other outfits would not afford you. Because what is a guy like Derek Chisora worth to the PBC? What is a guy like Derek Chisora worth to Queensberry Promotions, main events, Golden Boy? What's a guy like that worth? A guy who's already been there and done that, fallen short on some big stages, has losses that are almost in the double digits. What's a guy like that worth in the open market of the sport of boxing? What's a guy like that worth? Yet Matchroom have so chosen to find use for Derek Chisora, and he's reaping the benefit of that because they're giving you opportunities to make money. They're giving you opportunities to make money on important cards, and you should count your lucky stars that they still are, because some other outfits, they wouldn't afford you that opportunity. So to me, Derek Chisora did seem to be a bit of an ingrate. I'm gonna put it to you another way. Simplest way I could put it. Let's say Derek Chisora stuck to his guns because his fight isn't going to be the main event. He sticks to his guns, he walks away from the card. Let's say he does that. Who do you think that really hurts? I mean, in all honesty, you think that this guy is indispensable to Matchroom? They got David Price's and Dave Allen's and Derek Chisora's up the wazoo. They got a lot of those kind of fighters. Now, I'll admit that Derek Chisora and his showmanship, his gamesmanship, it is helping to sell some of the tickets, but rest assured that if he were to stick to his guns and walk away from this card like he threatened to walk away from this card, it would cost him the most, not Matchroom. You know, ahead of that epic rant, made a lot of headlines. It was all over the place the day Derek Chisora lost his cool, walked off the stage. I saw people sympathizing, the naive type. Boxing fans, they really aren't the brightest bunch. They can't see the forest for the trees. And they don't realize just the fact that you're still seeing Derek Chisora after all these years, after all the losses that he's piled up, that's a luxury to him. They're affording him that luxury to be involved in a fight where there's big press conference, a lot of cameras involved, you're going to be on TV, you're fighting a former world champion. They're affording you that opportunity, but it's an opportunity for you, not them. You're not indispensable to them. If you were to walk away from this situation, burn that bridge, and walk away from this fight, what else would you be walking into? Do you think you'll get at Queensbury what you're getting at Matchroom? Do you think you'll get at the PBC what you're getting at Matchroom? Do you think you'll get at Top Rank what you're getting at Matchroom? I mean, you go acting indispensable, you go acting that way, and at some point reality's gonna hit you harder than Dillian White did in the rematch. You're not indispensable, you can choose to walk away, but it'll cost you more than it costs them. So for this reason, I viewed Derek Chisora's rant as a bit justified, but overall, he's being a bit ungrateful. Count your lucky stars that you have these opportunities, because there's a lot of fighters that would be more than willing to stand in your place on such a card. There's a lot of other fighters, and you're contributing to the card, of course you are, but so are they. You know what? That's just one man's opinion. You can feel free to disagree.